Mom, we need you at our house by 7 a.m. tomorrow. Rebecca has an early meeting, and I can't take the kids to school because I have that presentation. My son's voice crackled through the phone, not a question, but a demand. I sighed, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest, the one that comes when you're being taken for granted yet again. I was exhausted from watching Emily and Noah for 12 hours the day before, my arthritis flaring up from chasing after a 4-year-old. But Daniel didn't ask if I had plans. He never did. Before we jump in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Daniel, I had planned to attend my gardening class tomorrow morning. I've paid for the full series and… Mom, please, this is important. My team is presenting to the board. You know how much this promotion means to me. His voice had that edge to it, the one that made me feel like I was failing him somehow. The kids have been asking for you anyway. Emily was just saying how much she misses Grandma. And just like that, he knew he had me. I've never been able to say no when my grandchildren are involved. Fine, I relented. I'll be there by 6:45. Great. Use your key to get in. We might still be getting ready. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone, wondering when exactly my retirement had turned into an unpaid full-time job with no benefits, no days off, and a boss who happened to be the same little boy I had once rocked to sleep through countless fevers and nightmares. What Daniel didn't know, what I was too ashamed to tell him, was that I had been sleeping on my friend Ellie's couch for the past 3 days. The pipe burst in my bathroom had caused more damage than initially thought, and my small home had become unlivable during repairs. I had planned to ask if I could use their always-empty guest room just until the contractors finished. But every time I tried to bring it up, Daniel changed the subject or had to rush off the phone. Little did I know that this particular morning would be the day everything changed. The day I finally saw my situation with the crystal clarity that only comes after decades of putting others first. I'm Elizabeth Collins, though everyone has called me Beth since before I can remember. For 35 years, I taught 3rd grade at Pinewood Elementary, helping hundreds of children learn to multiply, write in cursive, and hopefully develop a love of reading that would carry them through life. I loved every minute of it. Well, most minutes. The paperwork and state testing requirements, not so much. I raised Daniel as a single mother after his father walked out when he was only 4. Richard decided family life was too constraining for his artistic temperament, so he moved to California to find himself. The only things he ever found, apparently, were reasons not to pay child support or call his son on birthdays. So it was just Daniel and me against the world. I worked my teaching job during the day and tutored students in the evenings to make ends meet. We never had much, but Daniel never went without the essentials. I made sure he had opportunities, summer camps, college prep courses, and eventually a full ride to Oregon State based on his grades and my limited income. When Daniel met Rebecca during his senior year of college, I was thrilled. She was ambitious, polished, and from a well-connected family. Everything I wasn't. I thought she would be good for him, push him to achieve the things I never could. And in many ways, she did. Within 5 years of graduation, they had the big house in Oak Ridge Estates, the luxury cars, and the kind of lifestyle I could only see in magazines. Then came Emily, my beautiful granddaughter with her father's dark curls and curious eyes. 3 years later, Noah arrived with his mother's blonde hair and a mischievous smile that could melt even the sternest heart. I was smitten, completely in love with these little humans who carried pieces of my DNA and pieces of my heart. When Daniel asked if I could help out with childcare after my retirement 5 years ago, I jumped at the chance. Rebecca's maternity leave was ending, and daycare costs were astronomical, he explained. It would just be temporary, until they figured out a better arrangement. 5 years later, That temporary solution had become my daily reality. 3, sometimes 4 days a week, I drove the 20 minutes to their home in Oak Ridge Estates, arriving before dawn to get the children ready for school, while Daniel and Rebecca prepared for their important meetings and business trips. "Grandma, can you make pancakes with blueberry smiles?" Noah would ask, his small hand tugging at my sleeve as I tried to pack Emily's lunch simultaneously. "Of course, sweetie. Just give Grandma 1 minute to finish your sister's lunch." Rebecca would breeze through the kitchen in her tailored suit, dropping a kiss on each child's head before grabbing her travel mug of coffee. "Beth, Emily has ballet at 4:30. The leotard should be in her room somewhere, and Noah needs to practice his alphabet worksheets. His teacher says he's falling behind." Then she'd be gone in a cloud of expensive perfume, leaving me with a mental list of tasks that would take 2 people to accomplish. Daniel would follow shortly after, usually on his phone discussing something urgent with colleagues. "Mom, can you stay until at least 6:30 today? Rebecca and I both have client dinners." Again, not a question. I never complained, not really. These were my grandchildren, and I treasured every moment with them. But as the months turned into years, I noticed how Daniel and Rebecca seemed to assume my time had no value of its own. My art classes, garden club meetings, and doctor's appointments were all considered flexible and reschedulable around their needs. When my modest home needed major repairs last month, the same home where I'd raised Daniel, with its creaking floors and outdated kitchen, I realized I couldn't afford them on my teacher's pension. Years of helping Daniel through college and then providing free childcare had left my savings depleted. With tremendous shame and after many sleepless nights, I called Daniel and asked if I could borrow some money for the repairs. "How much are we talking about, Mom?" His voice had that tension it always got when discussing money. "About $15,000. The foundation has some issues, and the bathroom needs to be completely redone. The plumber says the pipes are corroded beyond repair." There was a long pause. "That's a lot of money, Mom?" "I know," I said quietly. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't necessary." Another pause. "Let me talk to Rebecca and see what we can do." 2 days later, Daniel called back with a solution. "Mom, we've been thinking. Instead of giving you the money for repairs, why don't we set up a monthly stipend? That way you'll have regular income to cover your expenses, and it's better for our tax situation." I was taken aback but grateful. "That's very generous, Daniel. Thank you." "We're family, Mom. We take care of each other. You've always been there for us with the kids." The monthly deposits of $2,000 started coming like clockwork. I used the first payment to fix the immediate plumbing issues, planning to save up for the bigger repairs. But then the bathroom pipe burst completely 3 days ago, flooding the entire first floor. The contractor estimated at least 2 weeks of repairs, and my home was currently uninhabitable, which brings me back to that fateful morning, arriving at Daniel and Rebecca's house at 6:45 a.m., exhausted from another night on Ellie's too-short couch that left my back in knots. I let myself in quietly, hearing the rush of morning activity upstairs, shower running, Rebecca's hairdryer, Daniel's muffled phone call. In the kitchen, I started the children's breakfast and packed lunches, moving on autopilot. "Grandma!" Noah came tearing down the stairs in his dinosaur pajamas, launching himself into my arms. His warm little body against mine made every ache disappear, if only for a moment. "There's my boy," I said, hugging him tightly. "Ready for some breakfast?" Emily followed more sedately, already dressed in her school uniform but with untamed bed hair. "Grandma, can you braid my hair like you did last week? Mom doesn't know how to do it right." "Of course, sweetheart. Eat your breakfast first." Daniel appeared next, scrolling through his phone while adjusting his tie. "Mom, great, you're here. We're both running late today. Rebecca has that charity luncheon after her meetings, so she won't be back until dinner. I have back-to-back appointments until at least 7. Can you handle pickup and dinner?" I took a deep breath. Daniel, I need to talk to you about something important. He glanced up briefly. Can it wait until tonight? I really need to prepare for this presentation. His attention already drifting back to his phone. It's about my house. The pipe burst completely and, "Oh no, that's terrible," he said, still typing something. Did you call a plumber? Yes, but the damage is extensive. The contractor says I can't stay there for at least 2 weeks while they repair everything. That got his attention. He looked up, brow furrowed. 2 weeks? Where are you staying? That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I've been on Ellie's couch for 3 days, but her apartment is tiny and her grandson is coming to stay this weekend. Daniel's expression shifted in a way I couldn't quite read. So, you need a place to stay? I was hoping I could use your guest room. Just for a couple of weeks until the repairs are done. I'd still help with the children, of course. He ran a hand through his hair, glancing toward the stairs to check if Rebecca was coming. Mom, that's a bit complicated right now. We're using the guest room for storage while we renovate the master closet. Rebecca's got all her seasonal clothing and shoes in there. There's literally no place to sleep. I'd been in that guest room just last week to retrieve a suitcase for their weekend trip. It had a perfectly made bed and only a few boxes in the corner. I don't need much space, I said. Just the bed. It's not just that. Daniel lowered his voice. Rebecca's been under a lot of stress lately with this promotion. Having someone else in the house, changing our routine. You know how she gets about her personal space. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I see. Look, why don't we pay for a hotel for you? There's that extended stay place near the mall. It would be more comfortable than Ellie's couch. Before I could respond, Rebecca came down the stairs, elegant in a charcoal suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She breezed past me to pour coffee into her travel mug. Good morning, Beth. Thanks for coming early. Emily needs to bring in something for show and tell today. Can you help her find something educational? Last time she brought in that seashell, and Mrs. Peterson said it didn't have enough learning content. Rebecca, Daniel interjected. Mom's having some housing issues. Her place flooded and needs repairs. Rebecca's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. Oh no, that's terrible. Is that what the monthly stipend is going toward? I felt my cheeks flush with shame. The first payment covered some of the initial plumbing work, but then the main pipe burst completely. Well, thank goodness for the stipend then, Rebecca said with a quick smile. I'm sure it will cover the hotel Daniel suggested until everything's fixed. They had already discussed it, before I'd even finished explaining my situation? Yes, I suppose it will, I managed to say. Perfect, that's settled then. Rebecca checked her watch. I've got to run. The children's dinner is in the fridge, that organic chicken dish they like. Emily has a spelling test tomorrow, so make sure she studies. And Noah needs his dinosaur costume for Friday's preschool presentation. She kissed the children goodbye, gave Daniel a quick peck on the lips, and was gone. Daniel followed shortly after, pausing only long enough to say, I'll text you the hotel information. Just charge it to your credit card, and the stipend should cover it. Gotta run. And then it was just me and the children in that enormous house with its 5 bedrooms. 1 master suite, 1 room for each child, 1 home office, and 1 perfectly usable guest room that I apparently wasn't welcome to use. As I braided Emily's hair and helped Noah find matching socks, a realization began to dawn on me. Quiet at first, and then with growing clarity. My own son, the little boy I had sacrificed everything for, didn't want me in his home. I was good. Enough to raise his children, but not good enough to be treated as family when I needed help. After dropping the children at school, I sat in my old car in the parking lot and did something I rarely allowed myself to do. I cried. Not the pretty, dignified tears you see in movies, but ugly, body-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep and wounded. When the tears finally subsided, I didn't feel better. I felt different. Something had shifted inside me, like a gear that had been stuck for years finally clicking into place. I picked up my phone and called the one person who had always given me straight talk. "Ellie? It's Beth. Can we meet for coffee? I need to talk." Ellie Martinez had been my colleague at Pinewood, elementary for over 20 years before we both retired. Unlike me, she had established firm boundaries with her family from day one. Her 3 adult children respected her time, called before visiting, and never assumed she would rearrange her life to accommodate theirs. We met at Perk's Coffee Shop, a small local place where teachers had been gathering for decades. Ellie took one look at my puffy eyes and ordered us both the largest coffees available and a slice of chocolate cake to share. "All right, Beth, spill it. What did that son of yours do now?" I told her everything. The flooded house, Daniel and Rebecca's refusal to let me stay in their guest room, the suggestion that I use my stipend to pay for a hotel. Ellie's expression darkened with each detail. When I finished, she pushed the chocolate cake toward me. "Eat that. Sugar helps righteous anger, and honey, you should be furious." "I don't know what to do," I admitted, picking up my fork. "I can't afford the repairs without Daniel's help." "The monthly stipend was your idea?" Ellie asked. "No, Daniel's. I asked for a loan for the repairs, but he suggested a monthly payment instead." Ellie's eyes narrowed. "And how much do you figure you save them in childcare costs each month?" I shrugged. "I don't know. They have the children in that fancy Montessori school, so probably whatever that costs." "Beth, the Oak Ridge Montessori charges $2,500 per child per month for full-time care. You're watching 2 children, so that's $5,000 a month they're not paying. Not to mention the evening babysitting, the weekend emergencies, and all the extra things you do like taking the kids to activities and helping with homework." I stared at her. That can't be right. It is. My daughter looked into it for my grandson before deciding on the public preschool program. And that doesn't even account for the fact that they'd never find a professional sitter willing to be on call 24/7 the way you are. The chocolate cake suddenly tasted like sawdust in my mouth. So the $2,000 they're giving me is less than half what they'd pay for proper childcare, and they've managed to make you feel like they're doing you a favor. Ellie reached across the table and took my hand. "Beth, I love you, but you've got to stop being a doormat. Your son is taking advantage of you, and it's time you stood up for yourself." "But what about the children? I can't just abandon them." "Setting boundaries isn't abandonment. Besides, I've seen how those children adore you. That relationship won't change just because you start demanding basic respect." As we talked, a plan began to form. It wasn't about revenge or even anger. It was about finally recognizing my own worth. "I need to find a place to stay first," I said, feeling a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. "You can stay with me until Friday when Carlos arrives," Ellie offered. "After that, let's see about getting you into one of those cottages at Sycamore Gardens. My cousin Irene lives there and loves it. They might have a short-term rental available." For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Ellie. I don't know what I'd do without you." That's what real family does, Beth. They show up when you need them, not just when it's convenient for them. As I drove to pick up Noah from preschool that afternoon, Ellie's words kept replaying in my mind. Real family shows up. Daniel had been my whole world for so long that I'd forgotten what it meant to be respected as a person with my own needs and boundaries. By the time I arrived at Daniel and Rebecca's house with both children, I had made my decision. I would continue to care for Emily and Noah because I loved them and they deserved stability, but everything else was about to change. Noah tugged at my hand as we walked through the door. Grandma, can we plant seeds like we talked about? You said we could make a fairy garden. I smiled down at him. Yes, sweetheart. Let's get your snack first, and then we'll start our garden project. As the children ate their snacks, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to Sycamore Gardens, inquiring about short-term accommodations. The second was to Patricia Chen, a legal consultant recommended by another teacher friend. And the third was to my bank, to check exactly how much I had in savings and what options I had for a small personal loan. By the time Daniel and Rebecca arrived home, separately and both later than they'd promised, I had bathed the children, supervised homework, served and cleaned up dinner, and gotten them into pajamas. Emily was reading in bed, and Noah was already fast asleep, clutching the small pot where we had planted seeds for his fairy garden. How were they? Rebecca asked, slipping off her heels and massaging her feet. Wonderful, as always, I said. Emily is becoming quite the reader. She finished her chapter book today. Rebecca nodded distractedly, scrolling through her phone. That's nice. Did she practice her spelling words? Yes, we went through them twice. She knows them all. Daniel came in 20 minutes later, loosening his tie and looking exhausted. Sorry I'm late, Mom. Client meeting ran over. Did you get the hotel information I texted? I did, I said calmly. But I've made other arrangements. I'll be staying with Ellie until Friday, and then I've found a short-term rental at Sycamore Gardens. He looked surprised. Oh, well, that works too, I guess. Is it affordable? It's within my budget, I said, deliberately vague. But while we're on the subject of finances, I wanted to talk to you about the childcare arrangement. Daniel and Rebecca exchanged a quick glance. What about it? Daniel asked cautiously. I've realized that I need to create some better boundaries for myself. I'm happy to continue watching Emily and Noah, but I need a formal arrangement with set hours and compensation. Rebecca's head snapped up from her phone. Compensation? But we're already giving you a monthly stipend. The stipend is for my housing repairs, I said evenly. This would be separate. Payment for the childcare. Services I provide. Daniel's expression hardened. Mom, we're family. Family helps each other. You know we appreciate what you do for the kids. Yes, family does help each other, I agreed. Like offering a spare bedroom when someone's house floods, or considering their needs and not just what's convenient. The room went very quiet. Rebecca suddenly found something fascinating on her phone again, and Daniel's face flushed. That's not fair, he said finally. We explained why the guest room wouldn't work. Yes, you did, and I've accepted that explanation. Now I'm explaining that my time and effort have value, and I need that to be recognized. Rebecca looked up, her expression calculating. What exactly are you proposing, Beth? I'll continue to care for the children 3 days a week, from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. That's still significantly less than you'd pay for full-time childcare. I'll need every weekend off, and if you need evening care, we can discuss additional compensation. Daniel's face had gone from flushed to pale. Mom, this feels like an ambush. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said sincerely. That wasn't my intention, but today made me realize some things need to change. I can't keep giving everything without taking care of myself too. Rebecca stood up abruptly. I think we all need to sleep on this. It's been a long day, and emotions are running high. Beth, we appreciate everything you do for the children, truly. Let's discuss this when everyone's had time to process. Daniel nodded, clearly relieved by his wife's diplomatic intervention. Right. We can talk tomorrow. Do you need a ride to Ellie's? No, my car is here. I'll gather my things and head out. As I collected my purse and jacket, I noticed Rebecca whispering something to Daniel, who nodded with a grim expression. I pretended not to notice. Good night, I said, heading for the door. I'll be here at 7 a.m. tomorrow for the children. Good night, Mom, Daniel replied, his voice strained. Drive safely. As I drove to Ellie's apartment, I felt strangely calm. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth without apologizing for having needs. Whatever happened next, I knew I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a journey that would transform not only my relationship with my son and his family, but my entire understanding of what it meant to be valued, respected, and truly loved. The morning light filtered through Ellie's thin curtains as I stirred awake, my back aching from another night on her couch. For a moment, I couldn't remember why I was there, and then it all came flooding back. My waterlogged home, Daniel's refusal to let me stay in his guest room, and my unexpected stand the night before. I checked my phone, 5:30 a.m. No messages from Daniel or Rebecca. I wasn't sure if that was a good sign or a bad one. You're up early, Ellie said, padding into the living room in her bathrobe. Want some coffee? Please, I said, folding the blanket she'd lent me. I need to leave by 6:15 to make it to Daniel's by 7. Ellie paused, mug in hand. Are you sure you want to go back today, after last night? The children are expecting me, I said simply. I won't let them down because their parents and I are having disagreements. Ellie nodded, understanding but not entirely approving. Just remember what we talked about, boundaries. I remember. I took the steaming mug from her with gratitude. I've been thinking about it all night. Truth be told, I had barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face, that mix of shock and displeasure when I had suggested being paid for childcare. How had we arrived at this place? When had my son started seeing me as a resource rather than a person? I showered quickly, dressed in the spare clothes I'd managed to salvage from my flooded home, and drove to Oak Ridge Estates with knots in my stomach. The grand houses with their manicured lawns seemed to mock me as I passed. I had always felt like an outsider here, never quite measuring up to the wealthy, polished residents of my son's chosen world. I pulled into Daniel and Rebecca's driveway at precisely 6:55 a.m., taking a deep breath before using my key to enter. The house was eerily quiet, unusual for this time of morning when there was typically a flurry of activity. Hello? I called, softly, setting my purse on the entryway table. No response. I moved toward the kitchen, noticing that the lights were off. No coffee brewing, no breakfast preparations underway. A note sat on the kitchen island, Rebecca's precise handwriting, immediately recognizable. Beth, we've decided to hire a temporary nanny service while we sort things out. The children have already been taken to school by the service. We'll be in touch soon to discuss arrangements. Rebecca. I read the note 3 times, my hands beginning to tremble. They had hired someone else, just like that. No discussion. No chance for me to see the children. Just a cold note informing me that I had been replaced. I sank onto a kitchen stool, the note crumpling in my grip. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Mom, we need some time to think about your proposal. The nanny service is just temporary. We can talk this weekend when things calm down. I stared. At the message, a wave of hurt washing over me. They hadn't even given me the courtesy of a phone call. After 5 years of restructuring my entire life around their needs, I had been dismissed with a note and a text. I typed back, I understand. Please tell Emily and Noah that I love them and will see them soon. No response came. I sat in their silent kitchen for a few minutes, gathering my thoughts. Part of me wanted to wait until they returned, to demand an explanation face to face. But a newer, stronger voice inside reminded me that this was exactly the problem. I had always been the one waiting, accommodating, bending. Not today. I left the house, locking the door behind me, and drove directly to Sycamore Gardens, the senior living community I had contacted the day before. Unlike the ostentatious homes of Oak Ridge Estates, Sycamore Gardens offered simple, cottage-style apartments clustered around green communal spaces. The leasing office was in a converted farmhouse at the entrance to the property. "Miss Collins?" A friendly woman in her 50s greeted me. "I'm Marianne Winters, the property manager. We spoke yesterday about short-term accommodations." "Yes, thank you for seeing me on such short notice." "Not at all. We actually had a cancellation for one of our furnished units. It's available for a minimum of 1 month, with the option to extend or convert to a long-term lease if you're interested." She showed me to a small cottage with a front porch overlooking a flower garden. Inside was modest but comfortable, a combined living and dining area, a compact kitchen, 1 bedroom, and a bathroom with grab bars already installed. The furniture was simple but functional, with a comfortable-looking queen bed and a small writing desk by the window. "It's perfect," I said, surprised at how quickly I had made the decision. "When can I move in?" "Today, if you'd like. The cleaning crew just finished yesterday." I signed the papers, handed over my credit card for the deposit and first month's rent, and just like that, I had a new home, temporary though it might be. The rent would take a significant chunk of my monthly pension, but it was worth it for the independence. Back at Ellie's, I packed up the few belongings I had with me. "You found a place already?" she asked, helping me gather my things. "A cottage at Sycamore Gardens. It's furnished, so I don't need much." "And Daniel? Rebecca?" I showed her the note and Daniel's text. "Those ungrateful little—" She caught herself. "Well, maybe this is for the best. It gives you time to regroup without their pressure." "They hired a nanny service," I said, still unable to believe it. "After all this time, they just replaced me overnight." "They're trying to scare you," Ellie said firmly. "They think if they show you how easily they can function without you, you'll back down and accept their terms again." "Maybe they're right," I admitted. "Maybe they don't need me." "Beth Collins, stop that right now." Ellie took my shoulders in her hands. "This isn't about whether they need you. It's about whether they respect you. And based on that cold note and text message, I'd say the answer is a resounding no." I nodded, blinking back tears. "What do I do now?" "Now, you focus on yourself for once. Get settled in your new place. Talk to that legal consultant. Figure out what you really want. Not what Daniel wants, not what the children need, but what you want." The concept was so foreign that I almost couldn't grasp it. What did I want? For so long, my wants had been subsumed by others' needs that I barely recognized my own desires anymore. After moving my few belongings into the cottage, I called Patricia Chen, the legal consultant Ellie had recommended. "I have an opening." "This afternoon at 3:00, she said after I briefly explained my situation. "Would that work for you?" "Yes, thank you." I spent the next few hours at the local discount store, purchasing essentials, toiletries, a few kitchen items, some basic clothing to tide me over until I could assess the damage to my belongings at home. The simple act of selecting things, based solely on my preferences, without considering anyone else's opinions, felt strangely liberating. Patricia Chen's office was located in a converted Victorian house downtown, her practice sharing space with a massage therapist and an acupuncturist. The waiting room had plants in every corner and smelled pleasantly of lavender. Patricia herself was younger than I expected, perhaps in her mid-40s, with a direct gaze and a no-nonsense manner that I immediately appreciated. "Ms. Collins, tell me about your arrangement with your son and daughter-in-law," she said after we exchanged greetings and settled in her office. I explained everything: the childcare arrangement, the flooding of my home, the monthly stipend that had recently replaced my request for a home repair loan, and finally, the events of the previous evening. "So they're providing you with $2,000 monthly, but you're providing approximately 40 hours of childcare per week, plus evenings and weekends as needed," she clarified, taking notes. "Yes, That's correct. And was there any formal agreement about this arrangement? No, nothing in writing. Daniel just said it would help with their tax situation, and the money started appearing in my account. Patricia nodded thoughtfully. And the money was originally intended to help with your home repairs, not as compensation for childcare services? Yes, that's right. I asked for a loan of $15,000 for repairs, and he suggested the monthly payments instead. She made a few more notes before setting down her pen. Ms. Collins, based on what you've told me, you have several options. First, you could formalize a childcare arrangement with appropriate compensation, as you suggested to them. Second, you could terminate the childcare arrangement entirely and seek the loan you originally requested. Or third, you could renegotiate the terms of the monthly stipend to clarify that it is, in fact, for childcare services, but with defined boundaries and expectations. What would you recommend? Honestly, I'd recommend option 3. The monthly stipend is already in place, which gives you some leverage, but we need to clarify the terms and ensure that your time and services are respected. And if they refuse? Patricia's expression softened slightly. That's the hard part, isn't it? You're not just dealing with clients or employers, this is your family. If they refuse reasonable terms, you'll have to decide whether continuing the relationship, as it stands, is worth the personal cost to you. I nodded, feeling the weight of that potential decision. For now, Patricia continued, I suggest we draft a letter outlining your understanding of the arrangement and proposing clear boundaries, specific days and hours, advance notice for changes to the schedule, and explicit acknowledgement that the monthly stipend is compensation for these services. That sounds reasonable. It is reasonable. Remember that, Ms. Collins. You're not asking for anything excessive or unfair. You're simply requesting clarity and respect. I left Patricia's office with a draft letter to review and a strange mixture of anxiety and determination churning in my stomach. This wasn't how I had imagined spending my retirement years, fighting with my son over basic respect and living in a senior community because my own home was uninhabitable. And yet, there was also a sense of possibility that I hadn't felt in years. Back at the cottage, I made myself a simple dinner and sat on the front porch, watching the sunset. Several of my neighbors waved as they walked past, a friendly elderly couple even stopping to introduce themselves. We're Jack and Marion Reynolds, the woman said warmly. Unit 14, just across the garden. We've been here 3 years and love it. Beth Collins, I replied, shaking their hands. I just moved in today, actually. Well, welcome to Sycamore. There's coffee and donuts in the community center every Wednesday morning. Great way to meet folks. Jack's smile was genuine, his weathered face crinkling at the corners. Thank you. I might just do that. After they continued their walk, I sat in the growing twilight, reflecting on how different this community felt from Oak Ridge Estates. Here, people actually stopped to chat with strangers. They didn't size you up based on your car or your clothing or your professional accomplishments. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Daniel. Hello, I answered, keeping my voice neutral. Mom? He sounded tired. I wanted to check in. Where are you staying? I found a place at Sycamore Gardens. It's quite nice, actually. Sycamore Gardens? Isn't that a senior place? It is. It's perfect for my needs right now. There was an awkward pause. How much is it costing you? I can manage it with my pension, I said, deliberately not answering his question directly. Another pause. Look, Mom, about yesterday. I think there was a misunderstanding. Rebecca and I weren't trying to be difficult about the guest room. It's just that with her clothes and everything. Daniel, I cut in gently. I understand. You've made your position clear. We hired a nanny service temporarily, he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. Just until we figure this out. The kids were asking for you this evening. A pang shot through my heart. Please tell them I love them and miss them. You could tell them yourself, Why don't you come over tomorrow? The nanny leaves at 5 or so? I hesitated. Part of me desperately wanted to see Emily and Noah. But another part, the new, emerging part that was learning to protect my own interests, recognized this as a manipulation tactic. I'd love to see them, I said carefully. But I think we should clarify some things first. What things? His voice took on an edge. The nature of our arrangement. I've been thinking about our conversation last night, and I believe we need to be more explicit about expectations on both sides. Mom, it's not that complicated. We help each other. That's what family does. There it was again. That phrase he used whenever he wanted something from me without giving anything in return. Yes, family helps each other, I agreed. And I want to continue helping with Emily and Noah because I love them, but I also need to take care of myself. Is this about money? He asked bluntly. Do you need more than the $2,000? It's not just about money, Daniel. It's about respect. It's about recognizing that my time has value, that I have needs too. He sighed heavily. I don't understand where this is coming from. You've never complained before. Maybe that's part of the problem, I said quietly. I should have spoken up sooner. So what exactly do you want? I'm having some thoughts drafted. I'd prefer to discuss it when we can sit down together properly. Drafted? What does that mean? Are you talking to a lawyer? His voice rose, in disbelief. A legal consultant, I corrected, just to help clarify the arrangement. Mom, this is ridiculous. We're family. We don't need lawyers to talk to each other. Apparently we do, because talking hasn't been working very well. The line went silent for so long that I wondered if he had hung up. Daniel. I'm still here, he said, his voice tight. I can't believe you're doing this, after everything we've done for you. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. I'll send you the letter tomorrow, I said, choosing not to engage with his last comment. We can talk after you've had a chance to review it. Fine. The word was clipped. Good night, Mom. Good night, Daniel. Give the children a kiss from me. He hung up without responding. I sat on the porch for a long time afterward, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. The conversation had gone about as well as I had expected, which is to say, not well at all. Daniel had never responded well to having his assumptions challenged, not even as a child. My phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be from Daniel, perhaps with a more conciliatory tone now that he had calmed down. Instead, it was from Rebecca. Beth, we need to talk about this stipend arrangement. Daniel is very upset. This isn't like you. Can we meet tomorrow? Just us? I stared at the message, reading between the lines. Rebecca wanted to handle me away from Daniel, to bring me back into line without his emotional reactions complicating things. She had always been the pragmatic one, the strategist. I'm available tomorrow at 10 a.m., I replied after consideration. We can meet at Perk's coffee shop downtown. Her response came quickly. Perfect. See you then. I put my phone away, a mixture of dread and determination settling in my chest. Tomorrow would be a turning point one way or another. The next morning, I arrived at Perk's 15 minutes early, selecting a table in the corner where we could speak privately. I ordered a simple black coffee and waited, reviewing the notes I had made after my meeting with Patricia. Rebecca entered, precisely at 10 looking immaculate as always in a tailored blazer and slacks, her blonde hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. She spotted me immediately and made her way over, her expression carefully neutral. Beth, she greeted, me setting her designer handbag on the chair beside her. Thank you for meeting me. Of course, I replied. Would you like some coffee? I'll get my own, thanks, the usual for me. She returned a few minutes later with an elaborate latte, setting it down carefully before fixing me with her direct E. Beth, I want to be straightforward with you. This situation is becoming unnecessarily complicated, and I think we need to clear the air. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. Daniel is very upset. He feels like you're holding the children hostage to get more money from us. I know that's not what you intend, she added quickly, seeing my expression, but that's how it's coming across. That's not at all what I'm doing, I said evenly. I love Emily and Noah. This isn't about withholding care from them. It's about establishing a clear arrangement that respects everyone's needs. I understand that, Rebecca said, her tone softening slightly. And I actually think some clarity would benefit everyone. But bringing in a legal consultant? That feels extreme, Beth. We're family. The consultant is just helping me articulate what I need. I've never been good at asking for things, Rebecca. You know that. She took a sip of her latte, considering me over the rim of her cup. What is it that you need exactly? I took a deep breath. Recognition that my time has value. Clear boundaries around when I'm available for childcare, and acknowledgement that the monthly stipend is payment for services rendered, not a gift or loan. Rebecca nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. And in return? In return, I'll continue to provide childcare for Emily and Noah 3 days a week from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'll need advance notice for any additional hours, and weekends will be at my discretion. That's significantly less coverage than we've had, she noted, her business mind calculating the gap. Yes, it is. You'll need to find additional childcare for the remaining days. She tapped her manicured nails on the table, thinking. The nanny service charges $35 per hour for both children. That's $350 per day, $1,150 per week for 5 days. We're currently paying you $2,000 per month. I waited, letting her do the math. If we were to pay you at market rate for 3 days a week, that would be approximately $4,200 per month, she concluded. Is that what you're asking for? No, I said, surprising her. I'm not asking for market rate. The $2,000 is adequate compensation for the 3 days weekly. But I need the boundaries to be clear, and I need the flexibility to say no to additional hours without feeling like I'm letting you down. Rebecca looked genuinely puzzled. If it's not about money, then what is this really about, Beth? Respect, I said simply, acknowledging that I have a life beyond caring for your children, that I have needs too. Like staying in our guest room when your house flooded, she said, connecting the dots. Yes, like that. But it's more than just one incident. It's about how easily you and Daniel made decisions about my life without consulting me. How you replaced me with a nanny service overnight without even a phone call. Rebecca had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. That was hastily done. Daniel was upset after your conversation, and he felt that hiring the service would show you that we had other options. It certainly did that, I said dryly. She sighed, rubbing her temple. Beth, I value directness, so I'm going to be direct. With you. Daniel and I rely heavily on your help with the children, much more than either of us likes to admit. The nanny service is adequate, but the children miss you, and frankly, it's significantly more expensive. I appreciate your honesty. However, she continued, I also understand where you're coming from about boundaries. I've told Daniel for years that we ask too much of you, that we take advantage of your willingness to help. He doesn't see it that way. This admission surprised me. I had always assumed Rebecca was the driving force behind their demanding schedule, with her high-powered career and social ambitions. How does he see it? I asked. He sees it as reciprocal. You supported him growing up, and now he's supporting you financially. In his mind, the childcare is your way of contributing to the arrangement. I felt a flash of hurt at the transactional nature of this description. Is that how you see it too? Rebecca hesitated. I see it as more complicated than that. I recognize that what you provide, consistent, loving care from someone the children adore, is invaluable. But I also know that Daniel feels responsible for your financial security, especially since your pension isn't substantial. So, the monthly stipend isn't really about the child care. It's about Daniel feeling like he's taking care of me, whether I need it or not. Essentially, yes. She took another sip of her latte. But that doesn't mean we can't reframe it. If having it explicitly acknowledged as payment for childcare services helps you feel more valued, I'm amenable to that. I studied her face, trying to gauge her sincerity. Rebecca had always been hard to read, her professional mask rarely slipping to reveal her true thoughts. And the boundaries, the reduced schedule? That's more challenging, she admitted, but not insurmountable. We could increase the nanny service to cover the other days. It would strain our budget a bit, but we'd manage. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and wariness. This was going better than expected, but I had learned not to trust easy solutions when it came to Daniel and Rebecca. What about Daniel? I asked. Will he agree to this? Rebecca's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Leave Daniel to me. He'll come around once he realizes this is the most practical solution. I don't want to come between you, I said, suddenly concerned about the dynamics I might be disrupting. You won't, she assured me. Daniel and I have different approaches, but we ultimately want the same things, what's best for our family. And like it or not, Beth, you're part of that family. The sentiment should have been comforting, but something in her tone made me uneasy. There was a calculating quality to her words, as if she were plotting several moves ahead in a chess game I didn't fully understand. I'd like to get our agreement in writing, I said, returning to firmer ground. Just so everyone's clear on the expectations. Of course, Rebecca said smoothly. Send me what your consultant drafts, and I'll review it. We can finalize the details by the weekend. She glanced at her watch and began gathering her things. I need to get back to the office, but I'm glad we had this talk, Beth. I think we can work this out amicably, without any more disruptions. The way she said disruptions made it clear she was referring to my sudden stand for independence, my refusal to continue as before. I hope so, I said, rising as she did. I miss the children. They miss you too, she replied, her voice softening for the first time. Noah keeps asking when Grandma's coming back. He says the nanny doesn't know how to make the dinosaur-shaped pancakes properly. Despite everything, that made me smile. Tell him I'll make him a whole herd of dinosaur pancakes once we've sorted things out. Rebecca nodded, her professional mask sliding back into place. I'll be in touch once I've spoken with Daniel. As she walked away, her phone already pressed to her ear, I sat back down at the table, trying to process what had just happened. The conversation had gone better than I expected in some ways. Rebecca seemed open to formalizing our arrangement and respecting my boundaries. But something felt off, a nagging sense that I wasn't seeing the complete picture. I pulled out my phone and texted Ellie. Met with Rebecca. She seemed surprisingly reasonable. Almost too reasonable. Ellie's response came quickly. Be careful. When people who have never compromised suddenly start making concessions, there's usually a catch. I pondered her warning as I finished my coffee. Perhaps I was being paranoid. Perhaps Rebecca was genuinely trying to find a workable solution for everyone. Or perhaps, as Ellie suggested, there was more to this situation than met the eye. Either way, I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my autonomy, and there was no going back now. Whatever came next, I would face it with the newfound strength that comes from finally standing up for oneself after years of silent acquiescence. As I left the coffee shop, the spring sunshine warming my face, I felt a curious lightness despite the uncertainty ahead. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was making choices based on my needs, not just responding to the demands of others. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, like learning to ride a bicycle again after decades of walking wherever others told me to go. The cottage at Sycamore Gardens felt more like home with each passing day. I had picked up a few houseplants from the local nursery, hung a watercolor painting Ellie had given me as a housewarming gift, and arranged my meager salvaged belongings in a way that made the space feel distinctly mine. The community had welcomed me warmly. Morning coffee gatherings at the community center had introduced me to a dozen neighbors, each with their own fascinating stories. "Did you hear we're starting a garden club?" Marion Reynolds asked, refilling my coffee cup during the Wednesday morning social. "Jack's got his heart set on building some raised beds behind the community center. The property manager approved it yesterday." "That sounds wonderful," I replied, genuinely interested. I've always loved gardening, but never had much time for it. "You should join us. First meeting is Saturday morning. We're planning what to plant for summer." I hesitated, my instinctive response being to check if Daniel might need me for the children. Then I caught myself. This was exactly the kind of automatic self-sacrifice I was trying to break free from. "I'd love to," I said firmly. "Count me in." It had been 3 days since my meeting with Rebecca, and true to her word, she had been in touch. She'd sent me a formal email outlining the revised childcare arrangement, incorporating most of the points I had discussed with Patricia. The terms were clear. I would care for Emily and Noah 3 days a week, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. The monthly stipend of $2,000 would continue, now explicitly acknowledged as payment for these services. Any additional hours would be compensated at $20 per hour, and I would have the right to decline extra childcare requests without penalty. It was nearly everything I had asked for, which made me suspicious. "It seems too easy," I told Patricia during our follow-up consultation. Rebecca agreed to everything without much pushback. Patricia reviewed the email again, her expression thoughtful. "The terms are favorable to you, certainly, but there's nothing inherently suspicious about that. Perhaps she simply recognizes the value of what you provide and doesn't want to risk losing it." "Maybe," I conceded, unconvinced. "But I know Rebecca. She's always calculating 10 steps ahead." "Well, whatever her motivations, the arrangement as outlined is fair. I suggest we formalize it with a simple contract that both parties can sign. That way, there's no ambiguity moving forward." I agreed, and Patricia promised to draft the document for review. We scheduled another meeting for Friday afternoon to finalize everything before my planned reunion with the children on Saturday. As I left Patricia's office, my phone rang. It was the contractor working on my flooded home. "Mrs. Collins, I'm afraid I have some bad news. We've found extensive mold behind the walls, likely predating the flood. It's throughout most of the ground floor." My heart sank. What does that mean for the repairs? It means significantly more work and expense than we initially estimated. We'll need to remove all the affected drywall, treat the framing, and replace everything. We're talking at least an additional $20,000, possibly more. I leaned against a nearby wall, suddenly lightheaded. I don't have that kind of money." "I understand. You might want to check if your homeowner's insurance will cover any of it. Some policies include mold remediation." But I already knew mine didn't. I'd chosen the most basic coverage to keep premiums affordable on my teacher's pension. "How long can the house stay as is?" I asked, if I needed time to figure out financing. The contractor hesitated. "Honestly, Mrs. Collins, it's not safe to live in as is. The mold levels are concerning, especially for someone your age. Respiratory issues, allergic reactions. It's not worth the risk." I thanked him and ended the call, my mind racing. The cottage at Sycamore Gardens was only guaranteed for a month. My savings were minimal, and my pension barely covered my basics. Expenses. The monthly stipend from Daniel and Rebecca would help, but it wouldn't be enough to address the extensive repairs needed. I was still deep in thought when another call came through. Daniel. Mom, Rebecca told me about your conversation. I want to apologize for overreacting the other night. His conciliatory tone caught me off guard. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. Rebecca explained your perspective, and I understand now that we've been taking advantage of your time. The arrangement she proposed seems fair. Again, this easy capitulation felt out of character for my stubborn son. I'm glad you think so. We'd like you to come see the kids this weekend. They miss you terribly. Noah's been asking for your dinosaur pancakes. Despite my suspicions, I couldn't help but smile at that. I miss them too. Saturday morning? Perfect. And Mom? I was thinking. About your house. How are the repairs coming along? The timing of his question, so soon, after my devastating call with the contractor, felt almost providential. For a moment, I considered confiding in him, telling him about the mold and the massive additional expense. But something held me back. They're progressing, I said vaguely. Still a lot to be done. Well, let me know if you need anything. We're here to help, you know. I know. Thank you, Daniel. After we hung up, I sat on a bench in the small park across from Patricia's office, trying to sort through my jumbled thoughts. Daniel's sudden change in attitude felt suspicious. Rebecca's easy acceptance of my terms felt calculated. The catastrophic news about my house felt like the universe conspiring against my newfound independence. What if this was all a test? What if the moment I admitted I needed significant financial help, the tentative respect I had just established would evaporate? I could almost hear Daniel's voice. See, Mom, you need us more than we need you. You can't afford to make demands. No, I would not give them that opportunity. Somehow I would figure this out on my own. I pulled out my phone and called the one person who had never steered me wrong. Ellie, I need advice. We met at her apartment an hour later. I told her everything. The favorable terms from Rebecca, Daniel's sudden change of heart, and the devastating news about my house. That's quite a triple whammy, Ellie said, setting a cup of tea in front of me. What's your gut telling you? That there's something I'm not seeing. Daniel and Rebecca don't give in this easily, and they certainly don't apologize without an ulterior motive. And the house? What are your options there? I sighed heavily. Limited. I could take out a home equity loan, but at my age and with my income, I'm not sure I'd qualify for enough. I could try to sell it as is, but I'd take a massive loss. What about your retirement accounts? Any possibility there? I withdrew most of what I had when Daniel was in college. There's not much left. Ellie was quiet for a moment, sipping her tea thoughtfully. You know, my cousin Irene faced something similar last year. Major foundation issues in her old place. She ended up working with a senior financial advisor who specializes in these situations. Want me to get his information? Please, at this point, I need all the help I can get. She jotted down a name and number on a notepad. Thomas Bailey. He's with Elder Financial Services downtown. Tell him I sent you. I tucked the information into my purse, grateful for Ellie's practical support. Now about Daniel and Rebecca. My instinct says they're setting something up, Ellie said. Bluntly, the question is what? Rebecca sent me a formal email outlining all the terms we discussed. Patricia is drafting a contract based on it. Good. Get everything in writing, but be prepared for them to try to renegotiate when they find out about the house. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, I admitted. Then don't tell them yet, Ellie advised. At least not until you've explored all your other options with Thomas. Knowledge is power, Beth. Right now, they think you need them more than they need you. Let's see if we can change that equation. The next morning, I called Thomas Bailey and was surprised when he offered to see me that same afternoon. His office was in a modern building downtown, but his demeanor was old school, patient, thorough, and refreshingly straightforward. "Mrs. Collins, based on what you've told me, you're facing a significant financial challenge," he said after I'd explained my situation. "But you do have options." "What kind of options?" I asked, trying not to sound as desperate as I felt. "Well, one might be a reverse mortgage. Given your home's location and its pre-damage value, you could potentially access enough equity to cover the repairs and have some left over." A reverse mortgage? I had heard of them but didn't fully understand the mechanics. Essentially, you borrow against the equity in your home, but instead of making monthly payments, the loan is repaid when you sell the house or pass away. It can be a good option for seniors who are house-rich but cash-poor. He walked me through the details, the pros and cons, the costs involved, and what it would mean for my long-term financial situation. Unlike some financial advisors I'd encountered, he didn't gloss over the disadvantages or push me toward a decision. "Another option," he continued, "would be to sell the property as is to a developer or investor. You'd take a hit on the price certainly, but you'd be free of the burden immediately. With the proceeds, you could potentially purchase a smaller, maintenance-free property or secure long-term rental housing." "Like at Sycamore Gardens," I mused. Exactly. Many of my clients find that downsizing to a senior community provides not just financial relief but a lifestyle upgrade, activities, social connections, and freedom from home maintenance worries. I hadn't thought of my temporary housing solution as a potential permanent one. The idea had merit. "What would the numbers look like?" I asked. "If I sold the house as is?" Thomas pulled out a calculator and worked through some figures based on my home's location, size, and condition. "Even with the mold issue and needed repairs, you're probably looking at $180,000 to $220,000 from a developer, depending on the market. After paying off your remaining mortgage of approximately $50,000, you'd have between $130,000 and $170,000. It was less than I had hoped, but more than I feared. And purchasing one of the cottages at Sycamore Gardens? Their purchase prices start around $150,000, based on my knowledge of the community. You'd be tight, but could make it work, especially if you're receiving that monthly stipend from your son." I nodded, considering the possibilities. "I'd like some time to think about this." Of course. Financial decisions of this magnitude shouldn't be rushed. "But Mrs. Collins?" "Yes?" "Don't wait too long. The mold situation will only worsen, potentially further decreasing your property's value." I thanked him for his time and insights, promising to be in touch within the week. As I left his office, I felt a curious mix of emotions. Anxiety about the magnitude of the decision before me, but also a strange sense of empowerment. For the first time in years, I was making significant life choices based on what was best for me, not what would accommodate others. Friday arrived with a flurry of activity. I met with Patricia to finalize the childcare contract, spoke with a real estate agent about potentially listing my house as is, and confirmed with Daniel that I would see the children the following morning. "They can't wait to see you," he said, his voice warm and enthusiastic. "Rebecca's planning a special breakfast." "Tell her not to go to any trouble," I replied. "I'm happy to make the children breakfast myself." No, she insists. "It's a bit of a peace offering, I think." Again, that nagging sense that something wasn't quite right. Rebecca wasn't the peace offering type. She was strategic, practical, and always looking to advance her position. What was her angle here? I pushed the thought aside as I prepared for my evening plans. Jack and Marion Reynolds had invited me to join them for dinner at the Sycamore Gardens Community Center, where a local chef taught monthly cooking classes for residents. "You'll love Chef Antonio," Marion assured me as we walked together to the center. "He specializes in simple but elegant meals that even kitchens like ours can handle." The evening was delightful. The chef was charming and talented. The meal we prepared together was delicious, and the company was engaging. For the first time since my house had flooded, I found myself laughing freely. The weight of my worries temporarily lifted. "You have a beautiful smile, Beth," Jack commented as we walked back to our cottages afterward. "You should use it more often." "I'm trying to," I replied, realizing it was true. Despite everything, I was finding moments of genuine joy in this new chapter of my life. Back at my cottage, I noticed a missed call from an unfamiliar number. The voicemail was from Howard Green, the contractor working on my house. "Mrs. Collins, I received an interesting call today from someone named Rebecca Wilson, who said she's your daughter-in-law. She was asking detailed questions about the extent of the damage to your home and the estimated cost of repairs. I didn't share specifics without your authorization, but I thought you should know. Please call me back when you can." I sat down heavily on the edge of my bed, a chill running through me. Why was Rebecca investigating my house repairs behind my back? How had she even gotten the contractor's contact information? I called Howard back immediately. "Thank you for letting me know," I said after he answered. "Did she say why she was asking?" "She mentioned something about potentially helping with the financial arrangements. She seemed particularly interested in the mold situation and whether the house was inhabitable." "I see. In the future, please don't share any information about my property without my explicit permission." "Of course, Mrs. Collins. That's standard practice for us." After hanging up, I sat in the growing darkness of my cottage, connecting the dots. Rebecca's sudden interest in my home repairs, her easy capitulation to my childcare terms, Daniel's abrupt change in attitude, it all pointed to something calculated. They were gathering information, assessing my vulnerability, perhaps looking for leverage to use against me if I continued to assert my independence. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow morning, Beth. We've missed having you around." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Should I confront her about contacting my contractor, or wait and see what she and Daniel were planning? After careful consideration, I opted for a simple, neutral reply. "See you in the morning. Give the children a hug from me." I slept poorly that night, my mind working overtime trying to anticipate what tomorrow might bring. By the time dawn broke, I had made a decision. I would proceed with caution, but strength. Whatever Daniel and Rebecca had planned, I would not be manipulated back into the role of the compliant, self-sacrificing mother and grandmother. I arrived at their house in Oak Ridge Estates at precisely 9 a.m. as agreed. The moment I stepped out of my car, the front door flew open, and Noah came tearing down the driveway in his pajamas. "Grandma! Grandma! You're back!" he cried, launching himself into my arms. Emily followed more sedately, but her wide smile betrayed her excitement. "We missed you, Grandma. The nanny doesn't know how to do anything right." I hugged them both tightly, my heart full. Whatever complications existed, with their parents, my love for these children remained pure and uncomplicated. Daniel appeared in the doorway, watching the reunion with what appeared to be genuine warmth. "Come on in, Mom. Rebecca's got breakfast ready." The house smelled wonderful, fresh coffee, bacon, and something sweet baking in the oven. Rebecca greeted me in the kitchen, looking surprisingly domestic in casual clothes with her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Beth, welcome back," she said, giving me a brief hug. "The children have been counting the days." "I've missed them terribly," I replied, accepting the coffee she offered. "We've all missed you," Daniel added, helping Noah into his seat at the table. "It hasn't been the same around here." Rebecca served a breakfast that would have impressed Martha Stewart: homemade cinnamon rolls, a vegetable frittata, crispy bacon, and fresh fruit salad. It was so unlike her usual rushed morning routine that I couldn't help but view it with suspicion. The conversation during breakfast remained light and centered on the children: Emily's upcoming school play, Noah's dinosaur obsession, the family's plans for summer vacation. No mention was made of our recent disagreements or the new childcare arrangement. After breakfast, the children dragged me to the family room to show me their latest art projects and toys. I lost myself in their enthusiasm, momentarily forgetting my wariness. It was nearly noon when Daniel suggested the children play in the backyard so the adults could talk. Rebecca poured fresh coffee, and we settled in the living room. "Mom, we've been doing some thinking," Daniel began, his tone serious but gentle, "about your housing situation." And there it was, the real purpose behind this carefully orchestrated family reunion. "What about it?" I asked, keeping my expression neutral. "Rebecca spoke with your contractor yesterday." "Yes, I'm aware," I interrupted. "He called to let me know." Daniel had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "We should have mentioned that to you first. I apologize." "Why were you investigating my home repairs behind my back?" Rebecca leaned forward, her business face now firmly in place. "Beth, we're concerned. The contractor mentioned extensive mold throughout the ground floor. He said it's not safe for you to live there, even after the water damage is repaired. And the additional costs are significant," Daniel added. "Much more than the original estimate." "I'm handling it," I said firmly. "But you don't have to handle it alone," Daniel insisted. "We want to help." "That's very kind of you, but I'm exploring my options." Rebecca and Daniel exchanged a look that I couldn't quite interpret. "We have a proposal," Rebecca said, her tone shifting to the one she used for business negotiations. "We'd like you to consider selling your house as is and moving in with us permanently." I blinked, caught off guard by the suggestion. "Moving in? Here?" "Yes," Daniel confirmed. "We could convert the guest room into a proper bedroom for you. You'd have your own bathroom, plenty of privacy, and you'd be close to the children." "And in exchange?" I asked, knowing there had to be more. "In exchange," Rebecca continued smoothly, "you would provide childcare on a more flexible basis. We'd still pay you the monthly stipend, of course, but without the strict schedule limitations. It would be a win-win situation. You'd be free of the burden of your house and those enormous repair costs, and we'd have reliable childcare from someone the children adore." The pieces clicked into place. This was why they had been so accommodating about my terms. They had a bigger plan in mind all along. They weren't actually giving me autonomy. They were hoping to bring me further under their control by making me dependent on them for housing. "I see," I said carefully. "And if I prefer to maintain my independence?" Daniel's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Mom, be practical. You can't afford to fix that house properly, and you can't safely live in it as is. The cottage at Sycamore Gardens is just temporary, and it's eating into your limited pension. This solution solves everyone's problems." "It's a generous offer," I acknowledged, "but I'd like some time to consider it." "Of course," Rebecca said quickly, before Daniel could respond. "Take all the time you need. We just wanted you to know it's an option." "Thank you. I appreciate that." The conversation shifted back to safer topics, but the atmosphere had changed. The carefully constructed facade of familial warmth had cracked, revealing the calculated maneuver beneath. When it was time for me to leave, the children protested vehemently. "Why can't Grandma stay?" Noah wailed, clinging to my legs. "Grandma has her own place now," Daniel explained, gently prying Noah's arms from my knees. "But maybe someday she'll live with us. Would you like that?" The obvious manipulation irritated me, but I kept my expression pleasant for the children's sake. "I'll see you very soon," I promised, hugging them both. "Remember, I'm starting with you again on Monday morning." 3 days a week, Emily recited. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. "That's right, sweetheart." Daniel walked me to my car, hovering uncomfortably as I got in. "Think about our offer, Mom. It really would be best for everyone." "I'll consider it carefully," I assured him. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror to see Daniel still standing in the driveway, watching me leave. His expression was troubled, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. He was my son, after all. Perhaps his intentions were good, even if his methods left much to be desired. But then I remembered the calculating look that had passed between him and Rebecca, the way they had investigated my situation behind my back, the carefully orchestrated morning designed to soften me up for their proposal. No, their offer wasn't about taking care of me. It was about ensuring they maintained control. Back at Sycamore Gardens, I found Jack and Marion tending to the newly installed raised garden beds behind the community center. "Beth, just in time," Jack called out cheerfully. "We're deciding what to plant in this last bed. Marion wants herbs, but I'm pushing for tomatoes. Care to cast the deciding vote?" Their simple, straightforward interaction was such a stark contrast to the manipulative dance I'd just endured that I found myself laughing. "Why not both?" I suggested. "Herbs and tomatoes complement each other beautifully." Jack slapped his knee. "The wisdom of Solomon. Both it is." As I helped them plant the seedlings, my hands deep in the rich soil, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Here, among these honest, straightforward people, I wasn't being managed or manipulated. I was simply Beth, not a resource to be exploited or a problem to be solved. That evening, I called Thomas Bailey at Elder Financial Services. "I've made a decision," I told him when he answered. "I want to sell my house as is and explore permanent housing options at Sycamore Gardens. Can you help me set that in motion?" "Absolutely, Mrs. Collins. I think that's a wise choice given your situation. I can put you in touch with a real estate agent who specializes in as-is sales, and we can start looking at financing options for one of the Sycamore Gardens cottages." "Thank you. And one more thing. I'd like to keep this completely confidential for now. My son and daughter-in-law have their own ideas about what I should do, and I need to maintain my independence." "I understand completely. Your financial decisions are yours alone, Mrs. Collins." My lips are sealed. After hanging up, I sat on my small porch, watching the sunset cast golden light across the community gardens. For the first time in decades, I was making a major life decision without considering anyone else's needs or preferences first. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Just checking in. Have you thought any more about our offer?" I typed a careful response, still considering all my options. "I'll let you know when I've decided." His reply came quickly. "Don't take too long, Mom. We need to make arrangements for the children if you're not going to be living here." The thinly veiled manipulation didn't escape me. He was trying to pressure me by suggesting my grandchildren would suffer if I didn't accept their offer. I didn't respond. Instead, I silenced my phone and turned my attention back to the sunset, refusing to let his tactics spoil the moment of peace I had found. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. I would need to begin the process of selling my home, securing financing for a permanent residence, and navigating the complex emotional terrain with Daniel and Rebecca. But tonight, sitting on my small porch in this unexpected new community, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't experienced in years: the quiet satisfaction of standing firm in my own truth, regardless of the pressure to bend. Monday morning arrived with a sense of anticipation. I woke before my alarm, taking extra care with my appearance before heading to Daniel and Rebecca's house. Today marked my return to caring for Emily and Noah under our new formalized arrangement, and I wanted to project confidence and professionalism. I pulled into their driveway at 6:55 a.m., noting that both Daniel's and Rebecca's cars were still there. Unusual, as they typically left early on Mondays. Rebecca opened the door before I could use my key, her expression pleasantly neutral. "Good morning, Beth. Come in. We're running a bit behind today." The kitchen was chaotic, breakfast dishes half cleared, Emily's school project materials spread across the counter, Noah still in his pajamas playing with toy dinosaurs on the floor. "Sorry about the mess," Daniel said, emerging from his home office with his tie askew. Conference call with Tokyo ran late. We're both a bit scattered this morning. I surveyed the scene, recognizing the not-so-subtle message. See how difficult things are without your full-time help? No problem, I said cheerfully, setting down my purse. I'll get Noah dressed while you finish getting ready. That would be great, Rebecca said, already tapping at her phone. Emily needs to bring her science project today. The display board is in the craft room, but I think some of the pieces fell off over the weekend. I'll help her fix it, I assured her, taking Noah's hand. Come on, sweetie, let's find you some clothes. As Noah and I headed upstairs, I heard Daniel mutter to Rebecca, "She's acting like nothing's changed." Rebecca's hushed reply, "Let's see how long that lasts." I pretended not to hear, focusing instead on helping Noah select an outfit featuring his beloved dinosaurs. By the time we returned downstairs, Emily was frantically trying to reattach fallen elements to her science project while Rebecca issued rapid-fire instructions. The glue is in the drawer by the sink. Make sure you use enough this time so it doesn't fall apart again. Your presentation is today, and Mrs. Henderson is very particular about these projects. Emily's face was flushed with stress, her fingers fumbling with small pieces of colored paper. I'll help you, Emily, I said calmly, setting Noah up with his breakfast. We have plenty of time. Rebecca checked her watch doubtfully. School starts in 40 minutes and we still need to drop her off. I can take her, I offered. It's on the way to Noah's preschool anyway. Daniel and Rebecca exchanged a quick glance. That would be helpful, Daniel admitted. We both have early meetings today. Of course, that's what I'm here for. Rebecca hesitated, then grabbed her briefcase. Emily's lunch is in the refrigerator. Noah has a play date after preschool with Tyler Kim. His mother will pick them up together, but you'll need to drop off his dinosaur backpack with extra clothes. Got it. Anything else? I left a list on the counter, she said, already heading for the door. Call if you have questions. Daniel followed shortly after, pausing only long enough to kiss both children goodbye. Neither of them mentioned the contract we had finalized on Friday, nor did they bring up their offer for me to move in permanently. The morning rush provided a convenient excuse to avoid the elephant in the room. Once they were gone, the atmosphere in the house relaxed noticeably. Emily's shoulders dropped, and her movements became less frantic as we fixed her science project together. Grandma, are you going to live with us? She asked suddenly, carefully gluing a cotton ball to represent a cloud in her weather display. The directness of her question caught me off guard. Has your dad talked to you about that? She nodded solemnly. He said you might move into the guest room because your house is broken. My house isn't broken, sweetie. It just needs some repairs. But Dad said it's better if you live here because then you can take care of us all the time. Of course he had framed it that way. I'm still deciding what's best, I said carefully. But no matter what happens with my house, I'll always be here for you and Noah. She seemed satisfied with that answer, returning her attention to the project. We finished repairs with time to spare, packed her lunch, and got both children into my car without further discussion of living arrangements. The day proceeded smoothly. I dropped Emily at school, took Noah to preschool, and used the free hours in between to meet with a real estate agent recommended by Thomas Bailey. Mr. Lowell specialized in as-is property sales and wasn't intimidated by the mold situation. Developers are desperate for properties in established neighborhoods like yours, he explained as we reviewed comparable sales. They'll factor in the remediation costs, of course, but they're still willing to pay a premium for the location. What kind of timeline are we looking at? If you're motivated to sell quickly, we could list by the end of the week and potentially have offers within days. The market's hot right now. I signed the necessary paperwork, feeling a mix of relief and nostalgia. That house had been my home for over 30 years. I had raised Daniel there, planted gardens, painted walls, created a life. Letting it go felt momentous, even if it was the right decision. After meeting with Mr. Lowell, I stopped by Sycamore Gardens to speak with the property manager about transitioning from my temporary rental to a permanent unit. We have a 2-bedroom cottage becoming available next month, Marianne Winters told me. The current owner is moving to assisted living. It's slightly larger than your rental and has a lovely garden space. Would you like to see it? The cottage was charming, recently updated with a modern kitchen, walk-in shower, and beautiful bay windows overlooking a private garden area. I could immediately envision myself there long-term, hosting the children for visits, perhaps joining the garden club that Jack and Marion were establishing. It's perfect, I said. What's the asking price? $158,000. Given current interest rates and assuming a decent down payment, your monthly payment would be less than what you're currently paying in rent. I did the mental calculations. If Mr. Lowell's estimates were correct, I could sell my home for around $200,000 even with the mold issues. After paying off my existing mortgage, I'd have enough for a substantial down payment on this cottage, with some left over for furnishings and a modest emergency fund. I'd like to make an offer, I decided. Contingent on the sale of my current home, of course. Marianne smiled. Wonderful. Let's get the paperwork started. By the time I picked up Noah from his playdate, I had set in motion 2 life-changing transactions, the sale of my longtime home and the purchase of a new one, all without consulting Daniel or Rebecca. The realization gave me a heady feeling of independence I hadn't experienced in decades. Noah chattered happily on the drive home, full of stories about dinosaurs and his friend Tyler. I half listened, my mind still processing the magnitude of the decisions I had made. "Grandma, are you coming to live with us forever and ever?" he asked suddenly, echoing his sister's earlier question. "No, sweetheart. I'm going to have my own special house." His little face scrunched up in confusion. "But Daddy said you're going to live in the guest room and make pancakes every morning." Daniel had clearly been laying the groundwork with both children presenting my potential move as a foregone conclusion. My resolve strengthened. "Grandma will still make you pancakes," I assured him, "just not every morning." When we arrived back at Daniel and Rebecca's house, Emily was already home, the nanny service having picked her up from school. The young woman who greeted us at the door introduced herself as Kayla. "Mrs. Wilson asked me to stay until 5:30, she explained. "But since you're here, I can go if you'd prefer." "That's not necessary," I said. "I'm only scheduled until 5 today. You can take over then as planned." Kayla looked relieved. "Great. Mrs. Wilson mentioned you'd be helping Emily with her homework. She has a spelling test tomorrow." I spent the afternoon helping Emily study while Noah played nearby. At precisely 5, I gathered my things and prepared to leave. "Are you coming back tomorrow, Grandma?" Emily asked as I hugged her goodbye. "Not tomorrow, sweetheart. Remember, I'm here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays now. Miss Kayla will be with you tomorrow." Emily's face fell. "But I need help with my multiplication tables. Miss Kayla doesn't know how to explain them like you do." "I can help you on Wednesday," I promised. "Practice the ones we went over last week until then." As I drove back to Sycamore Gardens, I felt a twinge of guilt. The children were caught in the middle of this power struggle, and I hated that they might feel any sense of abandonment because of my reduced schedule, but I also recognized the manipulation at work. Daniel and Rebecca were using the children's attachment to me as leverage, hoping I would soften my boundaries to avoid disappointing them. It was subtle, but effective emotional blackmail. My phone rang just as I was pulling into the Sycamore Gardens parking lot. "Rebecca." "Beth? Emily said you left exactly at 5 "Yes, that's the schedule we agreed upon. Kayla was there to take over." "I understand, but Emily is very upset about her multiplication tables. She has a quiz tomorrow and doesn't feel prepared." "I helped her review the ones she's already learned," I explained. "We were planning to tackle the new set on Wednesday." "The quiz is tomorrow," Rebecca repeated, her tone suggesting I was being deliberately obtuse. Could you possibly come by this evening to help her? Daniel and I both have work to catch up on, and neither of us is particularly good at explaining math concepts. The request seemed reasonable on the surface, but I recognized it for what it was, a test of my new boundaries. I'm sorry, but I have plans this evening, I said firmly. I'm confident Emily knows enough to do well on her quiz. She's very bright. Rebecca's sigh was audible. All right, I'll see if Kayla can stay late to help her. That sounds like a good solution. Have a good evening, Rebecca. I ended the call before she could respond, feeling a mixture of guilt and determination. This was the first real test of the boundaries I had established, and while it pained me to disappoint Emily, I knew that maintaining consistency was crucial. My plans that evening were actually a meeting with Thomas Bailey to review the financial aspects of selling my home and purchasing the cottage. He had offered to come to Sycamore Gardens to save me the trip downtown. You're in excellent shape financially, he assured me after reviewing the numbers. The sale of your current home, even with the mold issues, should provide more than enough for a substantial down payment on the cottage. Your pension and the continued monthly stipend from your son will easily cover the reduced mortgage payment and living expenses. And if the stipend were to stop? I asked, voicing the concern that had been nagging at me. Thomas's expression turned thoughtful. That would tighten things considerably. You'd likely need to find additional income or significantly reduce expenses. Have you reason to believe the payments might end? Let's just say I'm preparing for all possibilities. He nodded, understanding. In that case, we should discuss some contingency plans. There are part-time employment opportunities suitable for retirees and various assistance programs you might qualify for if needed. We spent the next hour exploring options, from part-time work to senior tax benefits to community assistance programs. By the end of our meeting, I felt more secure in my decision. Even without Daniel's financial support, I could make this work. It might not be easy, but it was possible. Tuesday passed quietly. I spent the morning with the real estate agent, signing listing papers and discussing staging strategies to minimize the appearance of damage. In the afternoon, I met with the contractor at my house to get a final assessment of the mold situation and determine what personal items might be salvageable. Most of your furniture will need to be professionally cleaned or replaced, Howard explained as we toured the property. But items stored in sealed plastic containers in the upstairs closets should be fine. I made arrangements to retrieve those containers the following day when I wasn't scheduled for childcare. Among them were photo albums, keepsakes from Daniel's childhood, and family heirlooms that couldn't be replaced. Wednesday morning found me back at Daniel and Rebecca's house, greeted by 2 excited children and a noticeably cooler reception from Daniel, who was working from home that day. Emily didn't do well on her multiplication quiz, he informed me as soon as the children were out of earshot. She was very upset yesterday. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. I'll work with her more today. Rebecca asked if you could help her last night, he pressed. She said you were too busy. I had an important meeting, I explained, and it was outside our agreed-upon schedule. Daniel's jaw tightened. Mom, this new rigid schedule isn't working for anyone. Emily's suffering academically. Noah's confused about why you're not here every day, and Rebecca and I are scrambling to fill the gaps. It's been 2 days, Daniel, I pointed out gently. Everyone needs time to adjust to changes, including me. That's just it. There didn't need to be changes. Things were working fine before you suddenly decided to… To what? I interrupted. To establish some basic boundaries? To ask for recognition of the value I provide? To reclaim some time for myself after 5 years of being at your beck and call? His expression darkened. That's not fair. We've always appreciated what you do for us. Appreciation isn't just words, Daniel. It's demonstrated through actions and respect. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. What about our offer? Have you given it any more thought? I have, I said carefully. And I've decided it's not the right solution for me. Because of some minor boundary issues? Mom, be practical. You can't afford to fix your house properly. Living here solves that problem completely. I'm handling the house situation, I said. I've explored my options and made decisions that work for me. His eyebrows rose. What decisions? What options? I had been planning to share my plans with him more gradually, but his demanding tone pushed me to be more direct. I'm selling the house as is and purchasing a cottage at Sycamore Gardens. Daniel stared at me, momentarily speechless. You're... what? When did you decide this? I've been working with a financial advisor and real estate agent for the past week. The listing goes live tomorrow. Without even discussing it with me? Mom, that's a major life decision. Yes, it is. One that affects my life primarily, so I made it. He shook his head in disbelief. I don't understand what's gotten into you lately. This isn't like you at all. Maybe it's exactly like me, I suggested. Maybe this is who I've always been, but I set it aside for so long that even you forgot. Before he could respond, Noah came running into the kitchen, a toy dinosaur clutched in each hand. Grandma, can we make cookies today? The special ones with chocolate chunks? Absolutely, I agreed, grateful for the interruption. Let's check if we have all the ingredients. Daniel retreated to his home office, clearly unsettled by our conversation. I spent the day focusing on the children, helping Emily with her multiplication tables, baking cookies with Noah, and maintaining an atmosphere of normalcy despite the tension with their father. At 4:30, Rebecca arrived home earlier than usual, her expression carefully composed. Beth, could we talk before you go? Daniel's joining by video call from his office. So this was to be an ambush. Of course, I said, helping the children settle in the family room with a movie before following Rebecca to the home office. Daniel's face filled the large monitor on the desk, his expression serious. Rebecca closed the door behind us and gestured for me to sit. Mom, Daniel began without preamble. Rebecca and I are concerned about the decisions you're making. Selling your home without consulting us, purchasing new property. These are massive financial commitments that could affect your long-term security. And by extension, potentially our financial responsibility for you in the future, Rebecca added bluntly. I appreciated her honesty, at least. I understand your concerns, but I've consulted with professionals who specialize in senior finances. My decisions are sound. Based on what information? Rebecca pressed. Are these professionals aware of all the factors? The extent of the mold damage? The limitations of your pension? The instability of the housing market? Yes, they are. Thomas Bailey at Elder Financial Services has been incredibly thorough. Daniel's frown deepened. You're working with a company called Elder Financial Services? Mom, those places prey on vulnerable seniors. They probably just want to sell you some expensive financial products. Thomas came highly recommended by Ellie's cousin, who was in a similar situation last year. He hasn't tried to sell me anything. Rebecca leaned forward, her voice softening with practiced concern. Beth, we're just worried that you're making hasty decisions during a stressful time. The flooding of your home was traumatic, and now you're living in temporary housing, feeling pressured. It's not the best mindset for major financial decisions. I appreciate your concern, I said, keeping my tone even. But I'm not making these decisions under duress. I'm making them with clear understanding of my situation and priorities. Which are what, exactly? Daniel demanded. To live in a senior community away from your family? To reduce your time with your grandchildren? To reject our offer of support? My priorities include maintaining my independence while still being present for Emily and Noah. The cottage at Sycamore Gardens provides a long-term, sustainable housing solution that I can afford. And it's only a 15-minute drive from here, so I'll still be close by. Rebecca and Daniel exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Mom," Daniel said, his tone shifting to one I recognized from my teaching days. The voice adults use when explaining something to a child they consider slow. "There's another factor you may not have considered. The monthly stipend we've been providing, it's not guaranteed indefinitely." And there it was, the threat I had been anticipating. "What Daniel means," Rebecca interjected smoothly, "is that our financial situation has some complexities you're not aware of. His division at work is undergoing restructuring, and there may be changes to his compensation package." "What Rebecca is trying to say," Daniel cut in, his patience visibly fraying, "is that if you insist on this rigid schedule and living arrangement, we may need to reconsider the stipend entirely. We offered it as support for a family member in need, not as payment for limited services with strict boundaries." I had prepared for this moment, yet it still stung to hear him so baldly use money as leverage. "I understand," I said calmly. "And while I would regret the loss of that financial support, my plans account for that possibility." "They do?" Daniel looked genuinely surprised. "Yes. My new housing arrangement is structured to be affordable on my pension alone if necessary. It would be tight, but manageable." "And the childcare arrangement?" Rebecca asked. "Would you continue with that if we discontinued the stipend?" The question revealed so much about their perspective. They saw my relationship with my grandchildren as transactional, something that could be withdrawn if financial compensation ended. "Emily and Noah are my grandchildren," I said, unable to keep a note of sadness from my voice. "My relationship with them isn't contingent on payment. However, the schedule and boundaries would remain necessary, with or without compensation." Rebecca nodded, seeming to process this information strategically. Daniel looked conflicted, perhaps finally recognizing the implications of the approach they had taken. "Let me be very clear," I continued, finding strength in the clarity of my position. "I love my grandchildren deeply, and I want to remain a consistent presence in their lives. I'm committed to caring for them 3 days a week as we've agreed, but I'm equally committed to maintaining my independence and creating a sustainable life for myself. These aren't contradictory goals." "They are if you can't afford both," Daniel argued. "Mom, be realistic. Without our financial support, how long before you're struggling to make mortgage payments on this cottage? Before you're choosing between medication and groceries? Before you have to sell again and move somewhere even more distant?" "Those are valid concerns," I acknowledged. "Which is why I've spent the past week consulting with financial experts, exploring assistance programs I might qualify for, and even looking into part-time employment opportunities suitable for someone my age." "I'm not approaching this naively, Daniel." "A part-time employment?" Rebecca looked genuinely alarmed. "Beth, you're 65. You retired for good reasons. Many retirees work part-time, not just for the income, but for the social engagement and sense of purpose. The community center at Sycamore Gardens has several residents who work as museum docents, library assistants, or retail associates a few hours a week." Daniel shook his head. "This is absurd. You're really willing to bag groceries or stock library shelves rather than accept our help?" "If that's what it takes to maintain my independence, yes." Rebecca, ever the pragmatist, seemed to recognize that their approach wasn't working. "Let's take a step back," she suggested. "Beth, none of us wants conflict. We all want what's best for the family, including you. Perhaps there's a compromise we haven't considered." "I'm open to suggestions," I said, genuinely curious what she might propose. "What if," she began carefully, "we maintain the current stipend and schedule for now, while you explore this cottage purchase? But instead of rushing to sell your house, you give it 6 months. See how the new arrangement works for everyone. If after 6 months you still want to proceed with selling, we won't stand in your way." It was a clever proposal, one that appeared reasonable while actually serving their interests. 6 months would take us through summer into fall, when their work schedules typically became even more demanding. They would have time to make me feel indispensable again, to gradually increase their requests until I was back to the same overwhelming schedule as before. "I appreciate the suggestion," I said. "But the mold situation in my house makes that timeline impractical. It's not safe to leave it unaddressed for 6 months, and I can't afford the remediation costs without selling." "We could advance you the money for the remediation," Daniel offered quickly. "Consider it an interest-free loan." Another attempt to create financial dependency. "That's very generous," I said. "But I've already signed listing papers. The house goes on the market tomorrow." Daniel's face flushed with frustration. "So you've made up your mind completely? Without any consideration for how it affects us or the children?" "I've considered everyone involved," I corrected him gently, "including myself, which is something I haven't done in a very long time." Rebecca stood abruptly. "I think we need to process this information. Beth, why don't you say goodbye to the children before you go? We can continue this discussion another time when emotions aren't so high." I recognized the dismissal for what it was. Our meeting was over, and they needed time to regroup and formulate a new strategy. I had effectively called their bluff about the stipend, and they weren't prepared for that outcome. I hugged Emily and Noah goodbye, promising to see them again on Friday. As I gathered my purse to leave, Daniel emerged from the office, his expression troubled. "Mom," he said quietly, "I don't understand why you're doing this. We've always taken care of each other. That's what family does." For the first time, I could hear the genuine confusion in his voice. In his mind, our previous arrangement had been fair and mutually beneficial. He truly didn't see how one-sided it had become. "Daniel," I said gently, "taking care of each other doesn't mean one person always gives while the other always takes. It means supporting each other's needs and respecting each other's boundaries. That's what I'm trying to establish now, a healthier balance for everyone." He shook his head, unconvinced. "It feels like you're pulling away from us, from the children. They need you, Mom. And I'll be here for them," I assured him. "Just on terms that allow me to take care of myself, too." As I drove back to Sycamore Gardens, I reflected on the meeting. It had gone largely as I expected. The implied threat about the stipend, the attempts to make me doubt my decision-making capabilities, the emotional leverage of the children's needs. What surprised me was my own response. The calm certainty I had maintained throughout, the clarity with which I had articulated my position. 6 months ago, I would have crumbled under such pressure. I would have abandoned my plans, accepted their terms, and continued in the same unsustainable pattern. What had changed wasn't just my circumstances, but my fundamental understanding of my worth. I had finally recognized that my needs mattered just as much as anyone else's. My phone rang as I pulled into the Sycamore Gardens parking lot. It was by Rebecca again. "Beth, I wanted to follow up on our conversation privately." "Yes?" I said cautiously. "I think I understand your position better than Daniel does," she said, her voice measured. "You want recognition and autonomy, not just financial support." "That's a fair assessment." "I respect that," she continued. "More than you might realize. Daniel tends to see things in black and white. You're either with us completely or you're abandoning us. I see the nuances more clearly." I waited, unsure where she was going with this. What if we maintained the stipend but removed the childcare? Expectation entirely? Her suggestion caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if we continued to provide the monthly support with no strings attached? You could see the children when it suits you, on your own terms. We'd hire the nanny service full-time." It was a surprising pivot, and one that made me instantly suspicious. "Why would you do that?" "Because you're family," she said smoothly. "And because the children adore you. I don't want financial disagreements to damage that relationship." That's very generous, I said carefully. But it doesn't feel right to accept financial support without contributing in return. You've contributed for years, Beth. Consider it belated compensation for all that unpaid time. The offer was tempting, financial security without the demanding schedule. But something about it felt wrong, almost manipulative in a different way. I need to think about this, I said finally. It's not a decision I can make on the spot. Of course. Take all the time you need. Her tone was light, but I could hear the calculation behind it. Just know that the offer is there. After we hung up, I sat in my car for several minutes, turning the conversation over in my mind. Why would Rebecca make such an offer? What was her angle? The answer came to me suddenly, with crystal clarity. If I accepted financial support without providing childcare in return, I would be completely dependent on their goodwill. They could withdraw the stipend at any time for any reason, and I would have no recourse. It was dependency without even the protection of a formal service arrangement. Furthermore, without the structure of a regular schedule, they could gradually increase their requests for occasional help until I was back in the same overwhelming situation as before. But now without any agreed-upon boundaries to protect me. It was perhaps the most insidious manipulation attempt yet, precisely because it appeared so generous on the surface. My phone buzzed with a text from Ellie. How did it go with Daniel and Rebecca? I typed back. About as expected. They tried several angles. Threats about the stipend, concerns about my decision-making, emotional leverage with the children. Then Rebecca made a surprising offer. What kind of offer? Ellie responded immediately. To continue the stipend with no childcare expectations attached. Ellie's response came quickly. Don't trust it. That's a platinum-plated trap. I smiled at her bluntness. That was my conclusion too. Are you okay? She asked. I considered the question carefully. Despite the emotional strain of the confrontation, I felt remarkably steady. Yes, I think I am. For perhaps the first time in years. As I walked to my cottage, I noticed Jack and Marion tending to the community garden beds we had planted together. They waved enthusiastically, calling me over to show the tiny sprouts already emerging from the soil. Those tomato seedlings are fighters, Jack said proudly. Just like someone else I know. Marion nudged him gently. Jack Reynolds, are you comparing Beth to a tomato plant? Meant as a high compliment, he assured us both. Tomatoes are resilient. They bend toward the sun even when planted in poor soil. They find a way to thrive. I laughed, but his words resonated more deeply than he knew. I had spent years in the shadow of others' needs, bending myself to accommodate them. Now, finally, I was turning toward my own light, finding my way back to the person I had once been, or perhaps becoming someone new entirely. That evening, I received an email from Mr. Lowell, my real estate agent. The listing photos for my house looked surprisingly good, with clever angles that minimized the damage and highlighted the property's charm and potential. The description emphasized the opportunity for investors or renovators and the desirable established neighborhood. The asking price was set at $210,000, slightly higher than we had discussed. Properties like this typically get multiple offers. Quickly, Mr. Lowell wrote. I wouldn't be surprised if we have interested buyers by the weekend. I forwarded the listing information to Thomas Bailey, who responded with approval of the marketing strategy and pricing. Everything was progressing smoothly on the financial front, despite Daniel and Rebecca's dire predictions. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Mom, we should talk again tomorrow, just the two of us. This is too important to leave unresolved. I typed back, I'm not available tomorrow. I have appointments regarding the house sale. Friday after childcare would work. His response came immediately. This can't wait until Friday. It's about the children. The emotional leverage again. I sighed, typing, If it's urgent, you can call me tomorrow evening. It needs to be in person, he insisted. I'll come to Sycamore Gardens tomorrow at 7. Wow. I recognized the tactic. He wanted to see where I was living, to assess my situation firsthand, perhaps to find new angles to use in his persuasion attempts. That won't work for me, I replied firmly. I have plans tomorrow evening. We can speak by phone if it's urgent, or in person on Friday. No response came. I could imagine his frustration at my refusal to accommodate his demand. The old me would have immediately rearranged my plans, prioritizing his perceived emergency over my own commitments. But that pattern was exactly what I was working to change. My plans for Thursday evening were actually a community dinner at Sycamore Gardens, a weekly social event I had been invited to join. It wasn't a formal appointment, but it was important to me nonetheless. A chance to build connections in my new community, to establish a social circle independent of my role as Daniel and Rebecca's childcare provider. As I drifted off to sleep, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few short weeks. The flood that had initially seemed like a disaster had become a catalyst for transformation. Sometimes our foundations need to be shaken before we can rebuild them properly. Whatever tomorrow brought, whatever new tactics Daniel and Rebecca might employ, I felt prepared to face them with the same calm clarity I had discovered within myself. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in decades, it was truly mine to choose. Thursday morning brought unexpected news. My phone rang just after 8. Mr. Lowell, the real estate agent. Mrs. Collins, I have some rather extraordinary news. We haven't even officially activated the listing yet, and I've already received 3 inquiries based on the preview I shared with a few select investors. Already? I said, surprised. But it doesn't go live until today? Exactly. Word travels fast in development circles when a property with potential becomes available. One investor in particular seems very motivated, Landon Development Group. They specialize in renovating homes with structural issues. That sounds promising. More than promising. They've made a preliminary offer, sight unseen, of $225,000. That's $15,000 above our planned asking price. I sat down, stunned by the figure. Sight unseen? Even with the mold issues? They're aware of the mold. I was transparent about the condition in my communications. They have their own remediation team and actually prefer properties with these kinds of challenges, less competition from traditional buyers. When would they want to close? I asked, mind racing. That's the other remarkable aspect. They're offering a 30-day closing period, all cash, no contingencies, and they're willing to let you remain in the property rent-free for up to 60 days after closing if needed to accommodate your transition to new housing. It seemed too good to be true. Should I be suspicious? Mr. Lowell chuckled. In normal circumstances, perhaps. But Landon has a solid reputation. They've done similar deals throughout the area. I've worked with them before and found them reliable. What do you recommend? Honestly, I'd consider accepting. We could counter at $235,000 to give ourselves some negotiating room, but even at $225,000, this is an exceptional offer considering the property's condition. I thought about it for only a moment. Let's counter at $235,000, but indicate we're very interested, and let's make sure the rent-free period after closing is firmly included in any agreement. Excellent. I'll draft the counteroffer immediately. With any luck, we could have this under contract by the weekend. After hanging up, I immediately called Thomas Bailey to share the news. He was equally impressed by the offer. This significantly improves your financial position, he noted. With that sale price, you'd have nearly $180,000 after paying off your mortgage. More than enough for a substantial down payment on the cottage and a comfortable emergency fund. And if Daniel follows through on his threat to withdraw the monthly stipend? You'd still be in a secure position. Your mortgage payment would be manageable on your pension alone, especially with the larger down payment. You might need to be more budget conscious, but you wouldn't be at risk of losing your home. This was the financial security I had been hoping for. Independence without precarity. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. There's one more thing to consider, Thomas added. With this improved financial picture, you might want to revisit your childcare arrangement. What do you mean? If you're no longer financially dependent on the stipend, you have more leverage to set terms that truly work for you. You could reduce your hours further if desired, or even volunteer your time on your own schedule without any financial component. It was a liberating thought, caring for Emily and Noah because I wanted to, not because I needed the money or felt obligated. I could be a grandmother rather than an employee. Thank you, Thomas. That gives me a lot to think about. Friday. Arrived with more good news. Landon Development had accepted my counteroffer of $235,000, and the contract was being prepared. The pieces were falling into place faster than I had anticipated. I arrived at Daniel and Rebecca's house at 7 a.m. as scheduled, mentally prepared for whatever emotional tactics Daniel might employ after our phone conversation had been postponed. To my surprise, both he and Rebecca were cordial, if somewhat reserved. "Good morning, Beth," Rebecca greeted me, already dressed for work. "The children are excited you're here. They've been talking about making fairy houses in the garden with you all week." "I've been looking forward to it too," I said, genuinely. Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway, his expression unreadable. "Mom, can we talk for a few minutes, before Rebecca and I leave?" "Of course." Rebecca discreetly excused herself to help the children finish getting ready, leaving Daniel and me alone in the kitchen. "I owe you an apology," he said, catching me off guard. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other day, and I realize I've been unfair." I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. "Rebecca and I had a long talk last night. She pointed out something I hadn't considered, that for years you've arranged your entire life around our needs without complaint. And instead of recognizing that sacrifice, I've been treating your desire for independence as some kind of betrayal." His admission was so unexpected that for a moment, I wasn't sure how to respond. "Thank you for saying that, Daniel. It means a lot." "I still don't fully understand your decision to sell your house," he continued. "That home has been in our family for so long, and it holds so many memories. But I respect that it's your decision to make." "The house has become more of a burden than a comfort," I explained gently. "The mold issues are extensive, and the repairs would be prohibitively expensive." He nodded slowly. "Rebecca suggested we might help with those costs, but she also said you'd probably refuse, that this is about more than just money for you." "She's right. It's about creating a sustainable living situation that supports my independence as I age." Daniel was quiet for a moment, absently stirring his coffee. "The cottage at Sycamore Gardens, is it nice? Will you be comfortable there?" "It's lovely," I assured him. "Smaller than our house, but perfect for my needs. And there's a wonderful community there with activities and social events." "And it's only 15 minutes from here?" "Yes. An easy drive." He seemed to be processing this information, reconciling it with his earlier assumptions. "Mom, about the stipend." "Daniel, I want to be clear about something," I interrupted gently. "I appreciate the financial support you've provided truly, but I don't want money to be a source of tension between us. I've received an excellent offer on the house, well above asking price. With those proceeds, I'll be in a stable financial position regardless of the stipend." His eyebrows rose in surprise. "Already? The house is selling that quickly?" "It hasn't even officially listed yet. A development company made a pre-market offer that's too good to refuse." "Wow." He seemed genuinely impressed. That's great, Mom. I'm happy for you." Rebecca returned with the children, ending our private conversation. But Daniel's changed demeanor persisted as they prepared to leave for work. He hugged me goodbye, something he hadn't done in weeks, and whispered, "We'll talk more this evening." The day with Emily and Noah was pure joy. We built fairy houses in the garden using twigs, moss, and flowers, read stories under the shade of the backyard oak tree, and baked cookies shaped like woodland creatures. I cherished every moment, fully present in a way I hadn't been able to be when constantly worried about meeting Daniel and Rebecca's expectations. When Rebecca arrived home at 4:30, earlier than her usual time, she seemed relaxed and genuinely interested in the children's activities. "Those fairy houses are magnificent," she praised, examining the tiny structures Emily proudly showed her. "You'll have to teach me how to make them sometime, Beth." "I'd be happy to," I replied, surprised by her warmth. "Daniel should be home by 5, she continued. "He mentioned hoping to talk with you before you leave. Would you mind staying a bit longer today?" "Not at all." The children continued playing in the garden while Rebecca and I sat on the patio watching them, an unusual moment of companionable silence between us. "Daniel told me about your conversation this morning," she said finally. "I'm glad he apologized. He's been struggling to understand your perspective." "I appreciated his words," I said cautiously, still uncertain of this new dynamic. She turned to face me directly. "Beth, I want you to know that I've actually been advocating for your position behind the scenes. Not because I necessarily agreed with all your decisions, but because I recognized that the previous arrangement wasn't sustainable." "Thank you for that," I said, genuinely surprised by her admission. "I've been in your position," she continued. "Not exactly, of course, but I know what it's like to have your boundaries continuously pushed back, to be expected to prioritize others' needs above your own. Before I became more assertive in my career, I was constantly accommodating colleagues who took advantage of my willingness to help." It was perhaps the most personal thing Rebecca had ever shared with me. For a moment, I glimpsed the human being behind the polished professional facade. "It took me years to learn to stand up for myself," she said. "You managed to do it at 65. That's impressive." Before I could respond, Daniel arrived home, greeting the children enthusiastically before joining us on the patio. The 4 of us enjoyed a rare, peaceful moment together, watching Emily and Noah play as the afternoon light turned golden. Eventually, Rebecca tactfully suggested taking the children inside for dinner preparation, leaving Daniel and me alone. "Mom," he began, his tone serious but gentle, "I've been thinking about what you said this morning, about not wanting money to be a source of tension between us. You're right. Our relationship should be based on love and respect, not financial transactions." I nodded, encouraged by his understanding. "So Rebecca and I have discussed it, and we want to restructure our arrangement. The monthly stipend will continue if you want it, with no strings attached, as Rebecca suggested. But whether you accept it or not, we'd like to establish a new understanding about your time with the children." "What kind of understanding?" "One based on your wishes, not our demands. You've been a constant, loving presence in their lives, and we don't want that to change. But the schedule should work for you too." It was exactly what I had been hoping to hear. Recognition that my relationship with Emily and Noah wasn't contingent on meeting Daniel and Rebecca's childcare needs. "I'd still like to have regular time with them," I said. "Perhaps 2 days a week instead of 3, with more flexibility about the hours." Daniel nodded. "That sounds reasonable. And for special occasions or emergencies, we'll ask with proper notice and respect your right to decline." "I'd appreciate that." He hesitated, then added, "There's one more thing. Rebecca and I would like to contribute to your down payment on the cottage. Not as a loan or with any expectations attached, just as a gift, from one generation to the next, the way parents often help their adult children buy their first homes." The irony of his framing wasn't lost on me. the child offering to help, the parent, reversing the traditional flow of generational support. But there was something touching about it too, a recognition of the circular nature of family care. "That's very generous," I said, "but with the house selling for above asking price, I should have more than enough for the down payment." "I understand. But the offer stands if you change your mind, or if unexpected expenses arise. No strings attached." "Thank you, Daniel. That means a lot." As I prepared to leave, both children insisted on walking me to my car, extracting promises for specific activities during my next visit. Rebecca hugged me goodbye with unexpected warmth, and Daniel helped carry my bags. "The house won't be the same without you, Mom," he said as I got into my car. "But I'm glad you'll still be close by." "I'm not going far," I assured him. "Just creating a bit more space for myself." "You deserve it," he said simply. As I drove back to Sycamore Gardens, I reflected on the remarkable shift that had occurred. In just a few short weeks, I had gone from an unappreciated, overextended caregiver to a woman with boundaries, financial security, and newfound respect from her family. The journey hadn't been easy, and there had been painful moments of confrontation and doubt. But the outcome was better than I could have imagined. At Sycamore Gardens, I found a small gathering of neighbors on Jack and Marion's porch, enjoying the mild spring evening. They waved me over enthusiastically. "Beth, come join us," Marion called. "We're celebrating Jack's birthday with some of his famous lemonade." I hesitated only briefly before joining them, accepting a glass of lemonade and a seat in their circle. The conversation flowed easily, stories of grandchildren, travel plans, community events, and gardening tips. No one made demands. No one expected me to rearrange my life for their convenience. I was simply Beth, a neighbor, a friend, a woman with experiences and opinions worth sharing. As twilight deepened into evening, my phone buzzed with a text. From Mr. Lowell. "Contract signed by Landon Development. Congratulations. Your house is officially under contract, closing in 30 days. I showed the message to my new friends, who responded with genuine excitement and congratulations. They understood the significance of this transition, many having gone through similar life changes themselves. "This calls for something stronger than lemonade," Jack declared, disappearing inside and returning with a bottle of champagne. "I was saving this for a special occasion, and this certainly qualifies." As we toasted my new beginning, I felt a profound sense of rightness, as if after decades of living slightly off-center, I had finally found my proper balance. The path forward would still have challenges, no doubt. Relationships with Daniel and Rebecca would require ongoing navigation. My financial situation, while improved, would still demand careful management. Aging itself would bring its own complications. But for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was facing these challenges from a position of strength and self-determination rather than obligation and self-sacrifice. I had reclaimed my life, not by abandoning my roles as mother and grandmother, but by ensuring that those roles existed within boundaries that honored my own needs and identity. My son had made me babysit daily, but wouldn't let me use the spare bedroom, so I had cut his monthly support. And in doing so, I had discovered something far more valuable than financial security or comfortable housing. I had rediscovered my own worth, my own voice, and my own power to shape the final chapters of my life story. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.